Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Big Cat Sanctuary's Conservation Conversation Debates, the second in our series. We're delighted today to be joined by Matt Hunt, who's the Chief Executive of Free the Bears, and our own Giles Clark, again, our Director of Cats and Conservation. Welcome, gentlemen.
Well, thank you, James. Good to see you, Matt.
Always good to see you, Giles. And Matt, thanks for joining us. It's really great to see you. You're out there in Lao now, I believe.
I am, yeah. Kind of stuck here. The borders are closed. So yeah. I actually just left the province for the first time in 5 months on a Friday for a rescue down in the capital. So I think that's probably the longest time I've spent in one spot in certainly the last 20 years.
Right. Yeah. Amazing. I think we've all felt lockdown, and as things start to move up, things start to change. But you guys obviously have met before, not only on filming, but have got a bit of history going on. So, Giles, I'm just going to, maybe for the guys at home, a little potted history of how you two guys met. And then, Matt, we're going to move on just to look at how maybe Free the Bears started and how you got involved in that. So, yeah, Giles, how did you two guys first meet?
So, well, Matt and I now go back, quite a long way. 16 years ago was the first time we met. And I can remember exactly when it was because the Boxing Day 2004 tsunami had literally just happened. Within a couple of days in between Christmas and New Year, Matt was doing a tour of Australian zoos, a speaking tour, and obviously I was at that time based in Australia. So that was the first time that we met, and then we very firmly became good friends and stuck out that friendship ever since. And I've tried to help Matt at whatever organisation he's been at the time, more recently, Free the Bears. And over the last few years, we've talked about how I could try and bring some significant help and support. So when I had the opportunity last year to go out and help Matt on the ground, I then decided that I'd see if we could drag a documentary crew along for the ride as well.
Looks like you were pretty successful at that. Yeah, so Matt, why Free the Bears?
Well, I worked in UK zoos for 10 years. My interest was always primates and big cats, and I became an accidental rhino expert, but then heard of some friends that had been doing work with bear rescue in Southeast Asia and had done a little bit of work during my time, and just kind of felt like bears are kind of the perfect combination where you have that amazing strength and power of the big cats, but then the challenges that come with trying to care for primates. So it kind of, they found me, and I, happened to know a couple of people that had done some work with Free the Bears. And so I got in touch and said I'd come and volunteer for 3 months, and somehow 20 years happened.
It's 20 years now you've been out there working at Free.
20 years on September 1st, yeah.
Wow, amazing. So then you've come back together for this program, Bears About the House, which has been amazingly successful. Great following and great awareness of that. But maybe the guys that have seen the program and they've seen Mary and they've seen the other guys that you've helped and all the drama that happened, just give the guys at home an insight about what it takes to get a BBC film crew out there and the challenges you might have faced when you were putting that program together.
My goodness, where to begin? Even logistically, and we prided ourselves on travelling light, and in comparison to other, filmmaking and documentary crews, and it would still take us on average 3 hours usually at check-in to check in our bags, and it would consist of somewhere between 250 and 300 kilos of kit. So even though we were a small crew, or the film crew was small, there was only 3 guys, including a director, cameraman, sound, assistant producer, etc. Just moving around required a significant amount of logistics. But then also, we want to capture genuality. We want to capture things as and when they happen. But when you're talking, multiple people and animals at the same time, that takes a lot of patience. So although the series is only 2 hours in terms of 1 hour episodes, we shot several hundred hours of footage across the year. And there's so many, there's so many amazing, fantastic stories that happen that there's just not enough time to include it all. And that's part of the reason BBC Earth on their Facebook page have now produced 8 unseen segments of our journey, if you like, throughout the course of the year, whether it be bears or we visited elephant sanctuary and an elephant festival, etc. So there's so much in there that, and we should also point out, when we talk about bears at the sanctuary, they're not just they're the species that we feature, but they're not the only species. As Matt said, there's primates, there's small cats, there's tortoises, there's a whole range of things. And probably besides the bears, one of the highlights for me last year, and probably one of the highlights of my entire career working with animals, was going out with Matt. And on one day, we released a whole load, numerous animals back out into the wild, which is where they started. They were then captured and came into the wildlife trade, and we could rehabilitate them and get them back out. And that was, leopard cats and tortoises and civets, as well as other primates and birds. And what an amazing, privilege to be able to do that.
Yeah, right at the heart of what we want programs like this to sort of get to, right, is actually sort of direct conservation action happening out there on the ground. That's amazing. And Matt, just locally for you, I mean, hosting the crew and sort of, but also how did it impact on the charity in terms of, the logistics of you operating? Did you find that difficult or challenging?
Yes, and it was both it was a blessing and a curse, because we genuinely had the busiest year we've ever had in Laos, and I would probably say the busiest year we've ever had in any of our country programs ever, with 18 bears being rescued and all sorts of other drama, and like Giles says, releases and stuff happening and government stuff happening, and to have that happening in the 1 year that we just so happened to have a film crew following us around, nothing was staged. I was always laughing with Tom, the director, in the first couple of trips, he'd say things like, could we do this? And I'd say, you don't need to make drama. There's enough drama. Your job is just to capture it. The drama comes to us whether we want it or not. And I think by the end of the year, he saw where I was coming from with that.
Yeah, I think it comes across. Yeah, I mean, I think that we had the same with Big Cats About the House. I think, Giles, many hours of filming, but actually the end result, it comes together as an amazing piece of television that creates, awareness of some issues that some people might not even been aware of. So, Matt, just moving on for people who've watched the movie. So what's the update? What's the news now? What's happened since you finished filming?
So the most exciting thing is that yesterday we took delivery of our 89th bear to be rescued in Laos. So Mary was Laos rescue number 66. So this is 23 bears rescued since that day when Mary arrived. And then the wonderful thing, with a healthy dose of irony, is that this cub became the first cub to be moved into our brand new, finally completed cub nursery, which, when we were talking about the possibility of filming and documentary and Giles moving over, Giles was going to be living in this cub nursery and it was going to be finished by the end of 2018. But we're working in Lao PDR, and people often joke that it's, PDR stands for Please Don't Rush. There's only so much you can do to work to schedules, especially when you've got a lot of adult bears coming in, which was the biggest holdback with that. We had all these adult bears coming in, so we started building a cub nursery, and we just had to drop tools and start moving on to adult bear accommodation because we had nowhere to put them. So yeah, for me, the biggest achievement of this week and possibly this year is cub nursery that I drew up a plan for about 5 years ago, finally done, and we have that in Laos now. So very pleased.
Yeah, fantastic news.
And we should highlight, Matt, that Mary was raised at home, as was David and Jane, because we just didn't have the facilities that were needed up at the sanctuary at that time. So even though, ultimately that's where we would have wanted to rear them, we just didn't have the option. It was, taking care of them needed such intensive care, like with any young baby vulnerable animal. So I'm so pleased, I'm so chuffed, and Matt and I stay in touch, almost daily about what's happening, and I get pictures and photos. So to have that facility done, is incredible.
Yeah,
and really I know that Catherine is personally very excited about coming over there for us and honeymoon in the nursery.
Oh dear. Well, we've hopefully you've upgraded the bathroom facility on there. So.
I'll send you some photos of the first attempt at tiling.
Okay. Oh goodness. Yeah, just one of the hardships of going out there that Catherine highlighted on the program, right? But for you, Matt, now what are your key issues that Free the Bears are facing? What's your challenges in the year ahead? So what's the next project that you want to complete?
So we've just started work on Bear House 5, which is the 5th new bear house at the sanctuary. That will actually be used to house the cubs that you see moving into the stage 2 cub nursery at the end of episode 2, because they're fast growing out, too big for that area.
Sure.
So we're up against the clock on that, as always. We've got enough bears already in our care. We've got 80 bears in our care with this new arrival yesterday in Laos. So we need Bear House 5 and Bear House 6 tomorrow, ideally. But, life doesn't work that way. So Bear House 5 is underway. Wonderful. I'm really hoping that we can get started on Bear House 6 while we're doing Bear House 5. If we can find a set of skilled welders and some enough materials and labourers. So yeah, housing the bears we have in our care, and again this ongoing thing which comes across in the sanctuary, that the problem we've got is to close the bear bar farms. We need to show the government that we have the facilities. And at the moment, we're still dealing with these, 1s and 2s and cubs in trade and animals being kept as pets and animals in hotels and whatever. And that's hard enough for us to keep up with without adding 20 bears from a bear bar farm to it. So, for the last 3 years, we've been trying to keep up. And what we really want to try and do this year is get ahead so that we can really push the government on the bar farming issue.
Yeah, it's funny how this echoes across lots of places. I mean, Cheetah Conservation saying out in the trafficking of the cubs out there in Somaliland, Giles, right? Mm-hmm. So, it's about, you can rescue them, but you've got to have somewhere to keep and look after them afterwards. So,
Exactly. When we're talking about, the type of facilities, rescue facilities and sanctuaries that are taking animals out of the trade, I think, it's indicative that we're always playing catch up. And that gives you an idea of the scale of the trade. Matt and I, again, were just talking, over the course of this week and COVID-19 and the impacts that we're starting to see that has, not just on people, not just, socially, economically and all the aspects that entails, but the impact that it's now going to start to have on the environment. And the bear that was rescued just yesterday that Matt talks about, that's the 12th bear that we have information on bear cub, since the outbreak of COVID. And I think we'll see those effects, continue for a long time. And if you think you only have to have a look at a map, and when we talk about, populations of animals, especially, something like a sun bear, which is incredibly elusive in the forest, it's really hard to accurately gauge numbers. But if you just look at the habitat, where we used to have sun bear habitat and its range 100 years ago in comparison to where it is now, that alone should indicate, warning lights, and we know that animals and species are in trouble. But the fact that we know that, the pressure of the illegal wildlife trade, and that's putting on species like bears, it's just unsustainable, and we talk about charismatic species in Laos. Laos used to be home to, an unbelievably healthy population of tigers. There's no tigers left in Laos. It's regionally extinct. That's leaving the bear as being sort of the charismatic flagship carnivore, if you like, and they're rapidly heading in the same direction.
Yeah, and as I think you've said it before, we might as well say it again. If we can't save iconic species like tigers and bears, then the other guys down the end of the food chain aren't going to have no hope at all, right? So, and look, so we joked about the the challenges of having a film crew there, but obviously the upside is an amazing program that's highlighted what Free the Bears are doing, and in our case, the Big Cat Sanctuary and the funding that we're giving to other organisations out in the field. So, how does having a Mary or a Maya, a jaguar, they're cute and cuddly and they engage people in an audience, but how practically does that help you, say, Matt, for Free the Bears? How does it help you?
I think I've been on a bit of a learning journey with this whole thing, because one of the first things when we started having this conversation was I said, we're not ever doing Bears About the House, with the trophy pet trade being such a big issue. It was something that I really, really wanted to steer away from. And Tom's very sort of persuasive, but still didn't persuade me at all. And we've got 239 bears in our care, and we're always talking about the numbers. Like I say, 23 bears arrived since Mary. People can get a little bit lost in that, and I think sometimes, and it's all possibly a little bit too much, when you start to say 18 bears rescued in 1 year, it blows people's brains. And having now gone through this experience and seen the impact of the series by zooming in on these individual characters, and Mary's special for sure, but she's not special. Every bear at that sanctuary has a story like Mary. Every one of them has the same character and intelligence and beautiful personality that Mary has. And I think it's been incredible to see the impact of I love sun bears. I've always loved sun bears. I think they're amazing. But to see how Mary's story has impacted people across the UK has been a real eye-opener for me. And I'm very, very glad that I've been proved wrong.
I would just say, over the last month leading up for when the show has gone to air, and even now, the show is completed, if you like, and I'm still doing interviews. I would have given over 50 interviews. On one day alone, I did 18 different radio interviews. And unless we had the program and we had a character like Mary that everyone is, completely engaged with, dotes on, and she's so charismatic, then, that wouldn't give us the platform or the opportunity to help raise awareness, to help educate people, and moving beyond that, it's about trying to create support and resources for organisations like Free the Bears that are at the coalface. Matt and his team are literally the front line when it comes to the illegal wildlife trade and conservation. And so, I feel so privileged and I feel so grateful that I've been able to contribute in that way.
Yeah, no, it is great. It's that being able to actually practically help and raise awareness. And Matt, though, you've said, I think you're surprised about maybe the fact that people just didn't know that this was going on. You've had a few messages about that, I think.
Yeah, of course. I think it's one of those things where, it's bad to say, but I guess I live and breathe the job and the issues that we're facing over here. So you can't help but kind of normalize things or become a little bit immune to it, because if every thing that happened had the terrible impact that it can have when you first hear about these things, I'd be a a nervous wreck and probably in a asylum by now. So for me, it's been quite incredible to be reminded of the fact, and of course I should know this, that the reason why things like the bear bile farming industry get away with happening is because people are not aware. And so what we really do need to do is make sure that people are aware so that we build that force to drive the change to stop it.
Yeah. Okay. And then that's exactly how these programs can help raise that awareness and drive the impact. So that's fantastic. Given the situation that we're in, though, and in a country like Laos, same as all countries across the world at the moment, we are in recovery mode from being locked down, from places being shut down. So, guys, what's your opinion on how this is going to affect things like the wildlife trade in terms of maybe people stepping up that trade to recover income, but also just the government response? I mean, the focus obviously is going to be on the economy for a bit. So do you think that's going to have a huge impact on the numbers that we're going to start to see? Giles,
can you go first, Matt?
It's off. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, go.
Sorry, you go.
Matt, go ahead.
Well, I would say, Giles alluded to this earlier. We, as soon as this happened, for a place like Laos that relies so much on tourism for its income, we've seen this in Luang Prabang. Everybody's been made redundant or furloughed. There's no social security or whatever. And when people are already living close to the poverty line and suddenly lose their income, the first thing that they do is turn to natural resources. They turn to the community fund, as it's seen oftentimes. And we knew that we would see a spike in poaching, but I'm quite shocked that already, what are we, 4 months in? We've got 3 times the amount of cases that we're currently following compared to this time last year, which is, this could be what does totally wipe out species. If this goes on and people continue to turn to the forest and wildlife trade for an income, then, we're going to see species potentially blink out in the next year. So that's the downside. The only good side that I can see of this pandemic is that finally people are realizing that what happens everywhere on this planet has the potential to impact us. We've all been talking about the threat of pandemics and zoonotic disease from illegal wildlife trade for years, and it's almost been either ignored or thought about as that might be a problem in the future. And I think the entire world is just seeing what's happened now because somebody decided to trade wildlife in a market in Wuhan. I couldn't have imagined this. So it was difficult to find funding for work to combat illegal wildlife trade before, and I only hope that when we come out the other side of this, that everybody from governments to United Nations to individuals are going to recognize that there's no better money spent than trying to stop this trade because it has the potential to destroy us.
Sure. Yeah. Beyond anything else, Giles, what do you think?
I was going to say, I totally agree. I couldn't agree with Matt anymore. The only thing I would add is that, there's so many nuances to the wildlife trade and the pressures and the challenges and where it comes from. And I don't think any of us, if you had children and they were hungry, you will do whatever is necessary to stop that. But beyond that, beyond the local level, beyond the community level, the wildlife trade is run by a network of incredibly nasty criminal characters and networks, and they're businessmen and they're business people, and they're the same people that trade in all of the other illegal activities, whether that's guns or drugs or people, and they're seeing an opportunity. 100% they're seeing an opportunity that COVID-19 has caused to increase their profits and demand. And the other thing, we should point out with the wildlife trade, whether it's bears, tigers, rhinos, or pangolins, or any of those other species. The less they become as a commodity, the more valuable they are. And it's self-perpetuating and it drives itself. But, you know, we're I feel, getting to a critical point, you know, and wildlife is an intrinsic necessary part of the natural world and ecosystems. But, you know, if we think the pandemic, COVID-19, has been bad for the world, then if we start to have ecological collapse because of what we are doing, you know, then we need to be holding on pretty tight. So it's not a luxury. Conservation shouldn't be regarded as a luxury. It's a necessity for our future generations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you highlighted that in the first episode when you saw just the packaging and the branding of some of the products that were on sale, right? So, as you say, it's just sort of professional. So,
and that's illegal. It's illegal, and yet people aren't doing anything about it because it's not seen as high enough priority, which needs to change.
Absolutely needs to change. So, I mean, again, and that's why this sort of program is so important about raising the awareness of what you guys are doing out in the front, and just, you know, making people understand that it's something that needs combating. And, you know, hopefully governments can keep this high on the agenda, and they can see, as you said, Giles, that, you know, this is not just about health, this is about ecosystems, and that's going to affect the economy on the bottom line. So maybe it's just something like health and safety, like environmental safety procedures. You know, we need to have animal welfare procedures put on the same level. You've got to have a law and you've got to do it. So, and then you've got to enforce it, right? So, great. Thank you guys for coming on and talking about these issues. We're running out of time for the conservation conversation, but if guys want to go out and help, maybe practically on a positive note, I mean, it is slightly overwhelming, as you said, Matt, about what's going on and what's happening in the numbers, but to be practical, you know, what can people do? How do they get involved, and how can they support?
For us, you know, we've obviously got more than almost 240 bears in our care, and with the impact of the COVID pandemic, it's having a bad impact on our ability to fundraise through normal things like volunteer programs or day tours or whatever. So ideally, you know, once this is over, plan a trip. I think everyone's enjoying planning trips at the moment. Come see us and come volunteer with us in Cambodia, Laos, or Vietnam. But in the meantime, you know, we're pretty desperate for people to visit our website and join up as a bear carer, where they can just give a small monthly donation, which just helps make sure that we're able to continue giving the quality of care that Mary and the other bears deserve whilst we ride out this pandemic.
Great, yeah. So guys, go to freethebears.org and you can see all about the work that Matt and the team are doing out there. And Giles, any last words from you?
Well, just, you know, beyond that, yes, definitely. If you have the ability to be able to support conservation, animal welfare organisations that are out there, you know, please, they're all desperate for help. But beyond that, you know, when there's so much that people can do. First of all, the show's highlighted that how many people don't know that this is even an issue. You know, tell people, raise awareness. If you think that somebody, did you see that program about bears? Do you know that bears are being captured in the wild and mistreated for these reasons? When you are traveling, you know, and you see something that you think might be illegal as far as wildlife is concerned, don't ignore it, you know, report it. There's mechanisms now in nearly every country, and there's laws in every country that should protect wildlife. So make sure, you know, you're reporting that issue. Volunteer your time. There's, you know, all the things that we talk about. If an issue is important to you, then we should push it up the political agenda, you know. So make sure people that represent you politically know that conservation, animals, welfare, environment, all of these things are important to you, and so therefore should be important to them.
Yeah, great. Thank you both very much for joining us today on our second conservation conversation. We hope to have many more, and as the Big Cat Sanctuary, this is really at the heart of what we want to push. Getting out this awareness of what can happen out there, and what we can fund, like Free the Bears, like the other charities that we're working with across the globe, to really see conservation into action. So thank you so much, gents, and we'll see you again soon, everybody, for another conservation conversation. Bye-bye.
No worries. Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you so much. Thanks.
Cheers
Thanks,
then.
James. See you
Bye-bye.
later.
Bye.
See ya.